Alright, so look at the study guide side of 9-1 that I just gave you. Everything that we talked about today should be a review. None of it should be new. You are allowed to use a calculator in this chapter so long as you show your work. We are going to be using pi because we're dealing with circles. You have to pay attention to what you're supposed to use for pi. Do you leave your answer what's called in terms of pi, or do you use 3.14? Never, ever, ever use 22/7. Why? Has anybody ever been asked to use 22/7 for pi? You heard of that? I hate that. Because look at the number pi on my wall. What kind of number is that? It's what? Is it rational or irrational? It's irrational. Irrational numbers are numbers that cannot be expressed as a fraction. So pi cannot be expressed as a fraction because it's irrational. Why are we expressing it as a fraction in terms of 22/7? So if you look at 22/7 on your calculator, I want you to note how close it gets to that decimal up on my wall. So here's 22 divided by 7. Well, we have 3.14, right? Follows 4 is a 2. On my wall I have 3.14159265 Is it even close? It's only close out to how many decimal places? 2. Why not just use 3.14? That's just as accurate. So 22/7 is the closest fraction to pi, but it certainly isn't pi, and I don't want you thinking that 22/7 is pi because it's really not. So let's look at a couple of things. First of all, let's look at your parts of a circle. Again, this should be a review. A chord has both endpoints on the circle, and it goes through the middle or the interior part of your circle. Look at this right here. They're calling it the diameter. Is the diameter a chord? Does it have endpoints on the circle, and does it go through the interior of the circle? Yes. So the diameter is considered a chord. The diameter is the longest chord in a circle. The diameter goes through the center. And the radius goes from the center to any outside point on the circle, and the radius, how is it related to the diameter? So the radius is equal to half of the diameter, isn't it? Or the diameter is related to the radius, how? The diameter equals what in terms of radius? How many radii is the diameter? 2. So the diameter is equal to 2r. So you can use either one of those interchangeably. You can replace r with half of d, or you can place d with twice r, one of the two. And of course then you need to be aware that that's your center. Circles are named by their centers. So if down here, you see on this circle, the center is S, we're going to call this circle S. So this is your notation for a circle. It looks like a little circle with a dot in the middle, and then S. So instead of writing out the whole word circle, use that. And a couple other things you need to be aware of. They've given you the definition of circumference. So circumference is your distance around the circle, and they have given you the formula for circumference as 2 pi r. Lots of you get it mixed up with area, which is pi r squared. So if circumference is 2 pi r, there's actually 2 circumference formulas you could use. You could also do circumference in terms of diameter. What would be the, bless you, what would be the formula in terms of diameter instead of 2 pi r? If diameter is 2r, what would be circumference? What can you replace 2r with? D. So couldn't circumference also be pi d? Either one of those two work. If I'm given the diameter and I have to find circumference, I'm just going to tack pi onto it. If I'm given the radius, I'm going to multiply it by 2 and tack pi onto it. So it depends on what I have as to which one of those two I'm going to use. Now the other formula that I want to give you, to make sure that you know it, is area. So area of a circle is pi r squared, because you're going to need that. You might need that today on your homework. So you're going to be working with those 3 formulas. In this particular example here, Your picture of your circle has a radius. You're supposed to understand that that's a radius and not a diameter. They have decided to replace 3.1 or pi with 3.14. I prefer, unless otherwise told, this as an answer. It is the most accurate answer. But if they say to round your decimal to the nearest hundredth, wouldn't that be 2 decimal places? So you would use 3.14. Be careful between using 3.14 and the pi button on your calculator. So find where the pi button is on your calculator if you're using a scientific calculator at home. If you're using your iPhone, your smartphone, whatever it is, they will have a pi key on there. So if I press my pi key on my calculator, my pi key happens to be above my caret right here. So if I press pi and hit enter, it's using a very long form of what you see on my wall. Depending upon your calculator, depends upon how many places out to pi it will go. But it's certainly not 3.14. This is a more accurate answer. And so you might find that you're off 100 or 200ths or 400ths of a point because you're not using 3.14, you're using your pi button on your calculator. So again, be careful of the directions, watch to see what they want you to do. They didn't mention anything here, so I would have used 3.14 just because it didn't mention it. Alright, let's go ahead and answer these questions here. So I want you on your own to answer 1 through 6. I want you to name the center of circle S, the radii, 3 different radii, the diameter, a chord, and then answer questions 5 and 6. So I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. You're done, compare with those around you. And you need to be using proper notation when naming your chords and your diameters and your radii. So remember they're line segments. So proper notation doesn't go away. So if you're done, find somebody around who's done and compare answers. Don't just sit there. Talk. Because there can be more than one answer to some of these questions. Alright, so what's the center of circle S? What's the center? S. And all you have to do is put an S because the notation for a point is just a capital letter. You don't have to put point S, just an S. And then name 3 radii of circle S. So give me one. Raise your hand, give me one. Seth? RS with a line above it. Is SR the same radius or a different one? Same. So if I said to name 3 radii and you said RS is one and SR is another one, am I going to count those as 2 different radii? No. So be careful. What's the second one? ST. Correct. What's another one? Which one? SM. Are there any others? So there's only 3 on this picture, right? Name a diameter. What's the diameter? Everybody. everybody? RT. So your diameter has to go through that center. So it's RT. Don't name it RST. That would be incorrect. Name a chord. SR. Did I hear that? That's not a chord. XY. Excuse me. Whoop. So XY is a chord. Is that the only chord? There's one more. RT is also chord. So remember, diameters are also chords. So you could have said XY or RT. Because these are your notes, I'd put both in there. Those are the only two chords in the picture. Now the question here says if RT from here to here is 8.2, find SM. So what's SM again? What kind of thing? A radius. And how's the radius, and what kind of thing is RT? The diameter. How's the radius related to the diameter? It's half. So SM should equal half of that diameter. So what answer is that going to give you? 4.1. The last question is SR, from here to here, the same distance or congruence to SM. Yes or no? Yes. What's the explanation? What kind of things are they? What do you know about radii? They're always congruent because they always go from the center of the circle to the outside, and that distance should always be the same. If it's a circle, that distance should be the same. So my answer would be all radii are equal. All right, then you have questions like 7 through 10 down at the bottom. And you have to find the missing diameter, radius, or circumference, and you might even have area in some of your problems today. So here's what I want to see for these. I'm going to do one with you, and I'll have you do one more. We're not going to do all four. So I'm going to choose to do, we'll do 7. We'll start off with 7. So here's what I want you to start with. I want you to start with C equals, because I'm given radius, I'm going to use 2 pi r, because radius is in my original problem. If they had given me diameter, I probably would have used pi d. So I'm going to replace r right here with the value that they gave me, and I ought to be able to find C then. So C is equal to 2 pi, and then instead of r, I'm putting in 7. Now what do the directions say about how my answer should be? Nearest tenth. Did they mention how I was to use pi? Was I to use my pi button on my calculator or just 3.14? They didn't say. So if they don't say, I would prefer that you use 3.14. Now sometimes in your book, in your answers, because different people have done the answers, not the same person does not do all the answers in your book. Like there's usually a discrepancy between your practice workbook and your textbook. So sometimes they'll use 3.14 and sometimes they use the pi button on the calculator when they don't mention it. So I'm just asking you to maintain consistency, and if they don't say anything, use 3.14. So I'm going to show you the difference between the two uses right now. So we're going to do 2 times, I'm going to use 3.14 at first, and then times 7. So this answer gives me 43.96, which is already rounded to 2 decimal places. So circumference is approximately equal to 43.96, and we don't know what the units are. We don't know if it's meters, inches, whatever, but I want you to start to understand, is it units? Is it units squared? Units cubed? What is circumference? And here's how you can tell. This would be units right there, wouldn't it, if I were to plug it in? What's 2 times 3.14 times 7 units? Is this going to end up getting squared or stay to the first power? There's no other units to multiply it to, is there? Doesn't it stay to the first power? Circumference is no different than perimeter. Perimeter is something I can see. I can see the perimeter of this room. I can see where the wall touches the floor. That's the perimeter of this room. But what happens when I actually touch that perimeter? What am I actually touching? Can I touch perimeter? I can see it, but can I actually touch it? If I touch the perimeter of that wall, I'm actually, or the perimeter of the room, I'm actually touching the wall and the floor at the same time, aren't I? So although I can see where the perimeter is, I can't touch it. So it's one-dimensional. It's to the first power. Same thing with circumference. I can see circumference of a circle, but I can't actually touch it, because the minute I touch it, I'm touching, you know, two different faces of a cylinder, let's say. So circumference is the first power. So that's just using 3.14. What if I use the pi button on my calculator? So 2 times pi times 7. In this particular case, would my answer still be 43.98? Yes. Could you see how this part right here could end up maybe rounding this up to 0.99? So it is possible that if you, this part of your decimal can change your second decimal place. So just be careful. All right, so we're going to use that. Is that the only thing I had to find? No, I have to find diameter, right? So diameter is equal to 2 times your radius. So if your radius is 7 units, isn't your diameter 14 units? All right, so I want you to do number 9. Using the same theory, start out with C equals, you can either use pi d or you can use 2 pi r. It's your choice. If I were you on this one, I would probably use pi d. It's less work. So go ahead and work that out. Replace what you know. And use your algebra to solve for the missing. I don't want to see scratch work on this. I want you using the formulas. And I want you using your algebra. With those around you. Make sure you have units on your answers. So this entire unit you're focusing on what's your units. Talk. And I would suggest you start bringing a scientific calculator to class, because I'm not going to break out the graphing calculators every single class period. So start bringing those to class, and it's on my cell phone, is not going to be tolerated. So at least get a rinky-dinky calculator. Most of the ones that add, subtract, multiply, and divide have a pi button on them. So bring something to class other than your cell phone. Today I'll let you use your cell phone, but I don't want them out because we tend to text and get distracted with them. Because I know you use them for science, so you have access to them somewhere. All right, so for this one, you should have gotten the answer for diameter of 37.10 units. And if they want you to, to the nearest tenth, oops, what did I do? So for both of these, if this is to the nearest tenth, what should this one have been, by the way? What does the 6 do to the 9? It bumps the 9 up, which when it's a 9, doesn't it bump this up? So shouldn't this one actually have been 44.0 units, right? And then this one still stays 14 units. This one should just be 37.10, right? But this one becomes 18 point, well, it depends. If you had 37.10 and you divided that in half, what are you going to get? Are you going to get 37 point, or are you going to get 18.5 or 18.6? If you divide this one in half, 37.10. Yes. Say that again. what did you use for pi? Ah, see what she said? She used the pi button. So what did I caution you against? Use 3.14, just so we're all on the same page. Now, as I said, your book's going to go back and forth between the two, but that might be why you're off. Well, it definitely is. So if you used your pi button on this one, I'm actually taking the 116.5 and dividing it by some form of pi. So let's divide it by both of those. 116.5. If I divide by 3.14, I get 37.1. But if I divide by my pi, I get 37.08. So that's what I'm talking about, where you're going to be off maybe a couple hundredths, and in this case we are. Will your answer round to the 10th place the same though, Megan? It'll still be 37.1. So rounding to the 10th will be fine. Now here's my question. So if you take 37.1 and divide it by 2, you get 18.55. If I round that to the nearest 10th, what do you get? 18.6 units. So that's, for the most part, what you're going to be doing today. Then I also added to the back of this an enrichment. It's really rather fascinating. That's because I like math. You might not find it so fascinating. This is extra credit. Woohoo! How much? I don't know. But essentially what it says is map makers have long believed that only 4 colors are necessary to distinguish among any number of different countries on a plain map. Have you ever thought of that before? I've never actually looked at a map of the United States or of the world and said, oh, gee whiz, they only use 4 colors. So let's find out if that's true. So you've got several different choices here. I'm going to do the first one here with you. You have to decide what's the minimum number of colors necessary, because they obviously aren't going to ask the maximum. Because here, this is broken up into 7 pieces. So I could use at a maximum 7 different colors, couldn't I? That's not what they're asking. So could I use 1 color? And here's the important part that you have to look at. Countries that meet only at a point may have the same color provided they do not have an actual border. So in other words, if I make this pink, I can't make this pink next door or this pink next door, but I could make this pink right here, or this pink right here, or this pink right here. It's okay that they touch right here in the center, but they just can't share a line. So if that's pink, could I have just 2 colors? Could I go pink and green? Only. Pink, green, pink, green, pink, green, pink. Can I have just 2 colors? Nope, so I'm going to have to go for a third. So now I've got purple. Pink, green, purple, pink, green, purple, pink. Pink, green, purple, pink, green, purple, pink. Will 3 colors work? Do I have to go in that order? Could I do it with only 3? Because I could do pink here, right? And I could do, if I did pink here, I could do purple here. So let's see if we can do it with 3. So I could do pink here. Because I don't want to necessarily go to 4. So I'm trying to keep it at a minimum. Then couldn't I do purple here? And green here? And then pink here, does that work? So I don't have to go in a specific pattern, do I? How many colors is that? 3. So for this one, the answer is 3 minimum. Question? No, it's purely spatial reasoning. Which I have no spatial reasoning, odd that I'm a geometry teacher. I have no spatial reasoning, but I can, for me it helps to put the colors in, personally. Now of course, it would also bother me if I put the color in and then it didn't turn out, and then I have to get out the white out, but that's because I'm a perfectionist too. So you have to finish all of this, And on this last question, in order to get the full extra credits, you can't just turn in partial extra credit. This one says, draw some plane maps on a separate sheet. What they mean is draw something like this. It needs to be a little bit more intricate than these two. So it needs to be something like these last three. And this one's not as hard as it looks. Think about borders and look at what each piece touches. So maybe find the piece that touches the most borders, and that might tell you how many colors you might have to have. But here, I just need you to do 2. So I'm going to, for here, do 2 minimum to finish this question. Not 2 minimum of color, but 2 minimum. And then you have to determine, you have to use 4 colors. And then determine if you could have used fewer colors. Like, for instance, on A, could I have used 4 colors on A? Definitely. The question is, could I use fewer? And here I did. I proved that I could use fewer. So it's kind of fun. That's due, this back part is due Friday. So I'll give you a couple of days to work on it.